Welcome tonight. Tonight we are continuing our series on Counterfruit. The heart of this series, just so you guys are aware, the heart of this series is looking at the fruits of the Spirit. Just so you guys understand, like fruits of the Spirit, meaning as we are one with the Lord, as we are one with His Spirit, it plays out in fruit. Meaning these are things that are seen because you are attached to the vine. These are things that are seen because you are attached to God. And so this fruit is the way that the Lord's Spirit plays out. And so today we're going to be talking about joy. And so what does that look like externally? You go, hey, listen, like we need to process joy. But the key in this is counterfruit, because when we live in a fallen world, the world's trying to manipulate everything. Go, well, this is what you need to go for. This is what you need to fight for. And so we're going to take a look at joy, but first we need to look at a counterness. And I think when we look at countering as we look at the counter to joy, I think most of us could say we would know what that was, and that would be, anybody guess? Happiness. I think for the most part, we could say the counterfruit to joy is happiness. I think we could say that, and here's why. Even like the dictionary, as it talks about happiness and people as they are describing it, this is what's kind of said. Happiness is typically a fleeting emotion, often sparked by a particular moment or event that brings a sense of excitement or exhilaration. So happiness a lot of times is, hey, listen, it's defined by an event or receiving or something that creates an uplifting emotion. Well, I'm going to be happy. So it's this like roller coaster of emotion. And so the difference is joy doesn't do that. So let's delve into happiness. Let's talk about that first, because the more we talk about happiness, we can see now the clear difference between scripturally what we see for joy. So, happiness. Number one, we quest to be happy in gaining or achieving something. A lot of us are guilty about that. Well, I'll be happy when I am, or when I have, or when I'm married, or when I get this, or when I have a car, or when I have a cell phone. I will be happy when. It's something a lot of times we fight for. So we look at happiness as an objective. The problem is we find out when we usually achieve that objective, it actually does not bring about the emotion, or even if it does temporarily, again, it's fleeting. So it ends up ultimately failing us. So when you say, okay, I'll be so happy when I get my car. And you might be happy. You might be like, yeah, I'm so happy. And then all of a sudden, a week later, like, yeah, it's cool, I got my car. And then a few weeks later, like, yeah, my car, that's whatever. And then a year later, like, that's my car. See how much it fleets? It's not as exciting anymore. And we like this excitement. Because happiness is about achieving something. The problem is, hold on, before I go into number two. Like, think about the Christmas toy or that special thing. You guys ever wanted something for Christmas? And you're like, I can't wait. If I get this for Christmas, it will be the best thing ever. And I can't tell you how many times even my kids now have asked for something. I'm like, I'm going to get them that. It's going to make them so happy. And then they play with it for 3 minutes and they throw it. I'm like, are you kidding me? My daughter, she had this toy when she was in Haiti. And Leslie and I were like, we're going to get her this special toy. It was this like purple toy cell phone, like this little ghetto cell phone thing. And I was like, you know what? They don't make it anymore. So, I do the right dad thing. I'm like, I'm going to go find it on eBay. And I found a brand new one in box on eBay. I'm like, oh my goodness. When she gets this toy, it's going to bring so much happiness. She's going to be so happy. She's going to be so excited. And literally the day she opened up, I'm like, yes, it's finally time. And she opened it. She's like, oh yeah, this is like my phone. Okay. Next present. And yet she told us over and over again, I want that toy. I want this toy. I want this toy. And ultimately, I'm like, oh, this is going to make her happy. But it doesn't. It's temporary. Which goes into number two. Happiness is temporary. Happiness is temporary. See, it comes and goes. On one minute, you're on cloud nine, and the next minute, you're gone. Because it was based on achieving something. You might achieve something at one point, but then that goes away, and it's gone. Happiness is temporary. And then that leaves you, guys, always chasing the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. Think about drugs even. People are like, well, I just want to be numb. I want to be happy. So then they start off with what we call gateway drugs. I'm like, oh, that's going to make me happy. Does that ever fully make people happy? No, it doesn't. They go to the next drug and the next drug and the next. They chase on the next thing, the next thing. And we do the same thing with everything that we do. We're like, oh, but if I have the next one, if I have the bigger, if I have the better thing, then. But happiness is temporary. You will never be ultimately happy because it'll go away. Into number 3. Ultimately, it is artificial, shallow, and incomplete. It's not as deep as you think it is. And although it looks good, it's fake and it's incomplete. You go, oh, I want to be fulfilled by this. You won't. Why? Because it's incomplete. Well, I want the depth. I'm going to feel this ultimate huge feeling. Well, the feeling might bounce for a second, but then it's shallow. It's artificial. But yet we chase it all the time. I'll be happy. I'll be happy. Elizabeth Elliot says this, and I think I have it on the board. The world looks for happiness through self-assertion. The Christian knows that joy is found in self-abandonment. If a man will let himself be lost for my sake, Jesus said, he will find his true self. So this idea that the second we think about what we want, our self-assertion, we put ourselves in the middle of it, we put it about what we want and all these things, is what we want for happiness, but we know that joy is only found in self-abandonment before the Lord. Which goes into, let's talk about the true fruit of joy. See, joy, on the other hand, it's a long-lasting state of being characterized by contentment and satisfied with life overall according to his will. According to Christ, and Christ alone. Joy is this long, everlasting state of being. Do you guys hear that? It's not a moment. It's a state of being, existing in what God has for you. Characterized by contentment. So, let's look at the fruit of joy. Number 1, true joy only comes from the Lord. And we had this conversation, which is interesting. Last week I said, you can only really understand love if you know God. You guys remember I said that last week about love. Well, I'm not saying people don't love people. There's a lot of different types of love. But the godly love only can truly exist if you know God. So can you be happy? Can you have some aspect of joy? Sure. But are you going to have the same contentment of biblical Christ-filled joy if you don't know God? No. It only comes from God. See, this contentment, this satisfaction in the Lord and his goodness is the only thing that can truly bring about joy. John 16:24 says, until now you have asked nothing in my name. Ask and you will receive, that your joy may be made full. God goes, hey, listen, I want to bless you within my goodness, within my understanding, within my glory, and through that you need to find joy. He goes, I want you to be full of joy, but it's only in him and his blessings. And you go, well, I haven't seen the Lord's blessing. The fact that you're here tonight and breathing means God is blessing you. And that alone should bring you so much joy. I woke up and I get to live life for him again. That alone should bring joy. Think about it. When you look at in God alone, this means, guys, that you don't have to carry the weight of the world. He has your back. He's the one that's going to carry it if you allow him to. And it ultimately will be for his glory. And as we lean on Christ that much more, it is going to bring about a peace and goodness only found in God, which ultimately leads to joy. Because then all of a sudden I don't have to carry it. I don't have to worry about it anymore. Hebrews 12:1 says this, therefore we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witness, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which is so easily ensnares us. And let us run with endurance the race set before us, looking to Jesus, the author and finisher of faith, for who the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and he has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Jesus in himself, glorifying the Father, was the essence of joy. He's modeling it for us. He's showing, guys, joy is found in Jesus and God alone. And with that, like, there should be a rest on that. All that he gave on the cross, that you don't have to die, you don't have to go through that suffering, that you don't have to be sacrificed on a cross. Whew. That should create a different understanding of us. So think about those moments where we are able to rest in God fully. And then you find this peace, this joy. One of the amazing places, when I was a little kid, we went up and camped. Anybody ever been to the Kookanusa Reservoir? Cool place. Most of you have been there, right? I don't know if you know this, a little bit about me. I was born in Libby. Don't judge me for that. But we only lived in it for like a year and a half. And then we moved to Washington. Again, don't judge me for that. But we came up every single year and camped on the Kookanusa. There's a place called McGilvery. It's a camp place. And that's where we camped every single year. And as a kid, I remember 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old. Every year we went up and we would go and explore. And I'll never forget, I found this little trail and I walked over the edge. And there was these cliffs that overlooked the whole reservoir. And it was like layered cliffs. So there's like steps and seats. I'm like, I'm going to sit down here. I just remember sitting there and I'd watch God's beautiful creation, eagles and just this beauty. And I remember, like, despite the fact that I was sitting on rocks, not incredibly comfortable, and there's ants, I didn't care. Because in that moment I'm going, God, wow, you are so good. I get to enjoy this. Enjoy. And I remember having this peace. And through that, I was able to go, God, you are so good. And I felt like in this place, I was like, this is where I could really go, wow. In God alone can I find joy. In the beauty of what he's done. And he's done it all. Whether I actually have time to stop and see it. I was at peace. A peace only found in God. And as I pursue God and I line up my heart with him, I'm able to actually start to go, oh my goodness, I can start to have more and more joy in the Lord. See, when you have joy in the Lord alone, it doesn't change. It's not like, well, I don't have his joy anymore. It's consistent. It's not fleeting. Ultimately, could you walk away from the Lord? You could, but ultimately God goes, hey, rest in me and you will find joy. Which goes into number 2. The joy of the Lord does not waver based on life's trials. The joy of the Lord does not waver based on life's trials. You can choose to walk away. But on the flip side, if you are walking in the Lord, you will find that joy. See, happiness differs with change. James 1, 2-3 says this, my brethren, count it all as joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. Count it all as joy when you go through hardships. God is going, hey, listen, don't look at your trials as defeats. Don't look at them as losing. Look at them rather as testing to steady your joy in the Lord. See, the only thing solid we should lean to is God, meaning it doesn't move. The world moves. The world will try to move you. It'll try to shift you, and it'll do everything it can in its worldly pursuits to take you off base, to take you off of Christ's joy. But you know what? If you are grounded in Christ, joy can be found in him and him alone, and it's not movable by the world. C.S. Lewis says this, we are half-hearted creatures, fooling about with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered to us. Like an ignorant child who wants to go from making mud pies in a slum because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased. I don't know if that makes sense. What we do is Christ is offering this pure emotion of joy. And we go, but I'll settle for happiness, because it's this rush. Joy is not always a rush. It's a consistent. But we trade it. And this is what he's saying. You're a little kid playing in the mud. This is what C.S. Lewis is saying. Listen, you're just making mud pies in the middle of garbage. And yet God goes, I have this beautiful thing for you that you're neglecting for this immediate emotional thing. And we're trying to get us to move. We're looking for gratification, feeling in these temporary moments, and we settle and we get moved. But because we choose it. See, we're not to be products of brief situations, good or bad, in our life. Because if we lock onto Christ and Christ alone, we shouldn't be swayed. So we're not to be moved. We're not to be wavering based on life's trials. Think about that, guys. One of my favorite stories is the story of Paul and Silas. Paul and Silas, they get arrested, beaten, stripped, naked, and they're sitting in prison. I don't know about you, but that's a pretty hefty wind. That's a pretty big push. And they stay so strong. And what do they start doing? They start worshiping. You want to talk about the joy of the Lord? They go, hey, this is where God wants us. We're going to worship. There was a consistency in their life that no matter what happened, they were so grounded in the Lord, it wasn't going to change anything about them. Are we that way? Or the second that crap hits the fan, we're like, dang you, God. And we get mad. Or we're like, I can't believe this happened to me. And all of a sudden we make it about ourselves and we're so pushed. I'm pretty sure that's most of us. And we have to fight it. We have to fight it with everything our being and go and seek the Lord. Number 3, rejoicing is an outward expression of an inward joy. Rejoicing. We see this word all over scriptures. To rejoice. To rejoice is an outward expression. So if I have joy and I'm going to celebrate it, I rejoice. Some people rejoice in song, like worship. You can rejoice in worship. But sometimes I'm just going to rejoice with how I love others because of that which Christ has loved me. Philippians 4:4. Paul is in the middle of prison, and he writes this, rejoice in the Lord always. I will say again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Rejoice in the Lord always. Have joy. Have that consistency in Him alone. And he goes, again I say, rejoice. Can you imagine doing that in the middle of a jail cell? That's the consistency Paul had. And then he goes off and let your gentleness be evident. He's talking about how you rejoice, how you overflow God's love is a part of rejoicing. How you live your life should be a rejoicing, resounding gong, edifying or giving God the glory in all that you do. Worshiping. See, when Paul and Silas got arrested, they worshiped. This was rejoicing for the love that God has shown them, regardless of the world's trials and all those hardships. So do you treat others with joy through rejoicing, with Christ's love? Do you love them? Do you go about in peace with thanksgiving? Do you have the peace of God that transcends all understanding, as Paul talks about? Because if you have joy, it starts overflowing. How do we rejoice? It starts with joy. It starts with your heart and being at that place. Number 4, joy has to be a constant pursuit because we do not come by it naturally. Do you guys understand that? We don't wake up and go, I'm just joyful. We don't. We don't go, man, I'm just filled with the joy of the Lord. You don't just wake up with that. You got to pursue it. Our innate emotion is not to the joy of the Lord. It's to focus on ourselves, which leads us to other emotions, which are not full of joy. We come into this world sinning and selfish. That's mine. Give me that. I want that. It's about us. We come into the world that way. However, there's a really cool aspect to children where we see biblically it says to have childlike faith, this excitement. And then the world gets heavier and heavier. So as we get the weight of the world, we get pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. It gets us more wounded and more traumatized, more looking at ourselves rather than the simplistic essence of God alone and the joy found in him. But we have to chase it. We go, God, I need more. I need filled more with your joy. And as we pursue the Holy Spirit, he goes, I'm going to give you more. Because we all fall short. Just like I said, we can hear sermon after sermon about love. Why? I got it figured out. No, you don't. Sorry, you stink at it. Well, I got joy figured out. No, you don't. Why? Because we all fall short. So are you full of joy? Are you full of the joy of the Lord? So here's 3 practical things. You go, okay, sweet. What does that even look like? How do I seek joy? Here's the 3 points. Number 1, align your heart with the Father's heart, find humility, and rest in his goodness. So, as we go, okay, joy, what's the realistic way that we pursue the joy of the Lord? First, align your heart with the Father's. When by that I mean our heavenly fathers, not your fathers. You align your heart with the heavenly fathers. As you do that, you're going to start to understand the way he sees the world. A brief glimpse, maybe not the whole thing. You're going to start to understand him. You're going to start to know what he cares about and what he doesn't care about. You're going to start to understand how everything is his testimony, not just a wound that you have. You're going to start to understand and see people the way he sees people and the goodness of loving others. You're going to start to see the grace that he has given to you and that he wants to carry everything. All that stuff you start aligning the heart and you go, oh my goodness, how do you not have the joy of the Lord? You ever talk to a Christian that went through a end life experience? And like, I'm just happy to be alive. There's a different joy about that. And I can speak for that from experience. When I was a junior in high school, I flew out of the back window of a car going 70. I was in an upper body cast for 6 months. And God made it ever more clear that me even living was a blessing. And because of that, it changed my outlook on life. I don't want you guys to have to go through that kind of experience to understand that life is fragile and God has a plan for you. Can you just allow him to do it and find joy in that? But you got to align your heart with the Father's. And then number 2, as you align your heart with the Father's, you find humility, which means, okay, you align your heart with the Father's, and then you lift him up where he deserves to be in your life. You have to. Because if it's about you, if you're eye to eye with God, you're not going to find joy. Why? Because your opinion starts mattering too much. Your wounds, your issues start mattering too much. And all of a sudden you're like, God, you don't understand what I've gone through. You can't have joy if it's about you. Because ultimately joy is selfless. So you got to find humility. Put God where he deserves to be in your life. And number 3, you need to be able to rest in his goodness. Find rest. If you find rest in God, the joy of the Lord will be your strength. Psalms 30 says this, I will exalt you, Lord. You lifted me out of the depths and did not let my enemies gloat over me. Lord, my God, I called to you for help and you healed me. You, Lord, brought me up from this realm of the dead. You spared me from going down into the pit. Sing the praises of the Lord. You, his faithful people, praise his holy name. For his anger lasts for a moment, but his favor lasts for a lifetime. Weeping may stay for the night, but rejoicing comes in the morning. But joy comes in the morning. See, as we understand his goodness to us, as we understand how God has been so faithful even when we are not, what he's spared us from death, from our own sins. That should create a peace. Even though we go through hardships and sometimes we might make God angry based on our decisions, but listen, he goes, I want you to rest in me and in that find joy. So how well do you seek joy? How well would you say, are you good at joy? Here's some discussion questions for you guys. Do you feel like you seek happiness or rest in God's joy more? Compare the two. In what ways do you seek happiness? And what are those outcomes? Where do you fall short in seeking joy? And is there anything else that stood out to you about tonight? We're going to spend like 3 minutes on a worship song. Nathan will play a song. And then I'll close this in prayer and we'll break for small groups. So why don't you bow your heads, read through the questions, and pray.